So we're gonna try to break down this episode of Monday Night Raw. Outside of the AJ Styles stuff, because they had sort of a mini tribute for AJ Styles, they were in Atlanta, Georgia. So not too far off from Gainesville, Georgia, where AJ is from. So they kind of wanted to give him a little mini tribute to go along for his career. Outside of that, I don't know how anybody could physically watch this show on a week-to-week basis and not feel like they've wasted their fucking time. Because that's certainly what I felt here tonight. Like, for instance, we had Brock Lesnar show up here and literally do nothing. But I'll get to that as far as later on goes. But you know what? Let's get the good out of the way. AJ Styles. Throughout the night, they had sort of video packages playing for AJ Styles. People that he wrestled, like the Good Brothers, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa. People, his peers speaking on him, like Bailey. And at the end of the night, we had sort of a little, tribute here towards AJ Styles. He gave a nice little speech as far as, his beginnings in professional wrestling, where he started, his wife, who, never changed him, who never, who was basically his rock for him. And at the end, he sort of leaves his gloves there in the ring. He says that, he took them from the Royal Rumble because he wanted them to be home here in Georgia. And as the show is closing and you see the credits roll, you hear the Undertaker's gong go off, and immediately this kind of, rang into my head as far as like, yo, what is going on here? I can't be the only one that legitimately thought that The Undertaker was going to come out of retirement to face AJ Styles at WrestleMania one last time. Like, I don't think I'm the only one that was crazy enough to think that, especially with the way that they're selling WrestleMania, how they can't sell WrestleMania is what I should say. The trouble that they're having trying to sell that event. Like, it wouldn't be far-fetched at this point in time that TKO is calling The Undertaker and telling him, you know what, pal, it's time for you to, replace your bad hip and get back into the ring because we need you. That's kind of what I thought here. But eventually, The Undertaker gives the news to AJ Styles that he is going to be inducted into the 2026 Hall of Fame. Of course, it gets a big ovation. Obviously good for AJ to go into the Hall of Fame. It's a nice moment, but I also kind of figured that this is WWE's way of trying to, at the very least, have AJ and profit off of him before he, eventually probably goes off to, possibly AEW or goes back to Japan or something like that, because I don't know whether or not AJ is going to eventually wrestle somewhere else, or if WWE, they're giving him all this, praise and this Hall of Fame spot in order for him to maintain in the WWE family. That's sort of my thoughts there as far as that goes. That was the gut of the show. Now let's get to the bad. Here tonight we had Bronson Reed have a fucking injury. Apparently he tore his bicep. He was in a match here against Jey Uso and Grande Americano. This is how simple it is. He was going to break a pinfall, and this fucking guy tears his bicep. And, eventually Jey Uso goes over, which originally it was planned that Bronson Reed was going to go over so he can advance to the Elimination Chamber. And now we have Yeet Man going into the Elimination Chamber, which I know everybody's so fucking thrilled about that. But you know what? Bronson Reed getting injured is literally the nail in the coffin for this Vision group. Because literally all you have left is Austin Theory and Logan Paul, along with Paul Heyman. Like, this group is fucking cursed. You had Seth Rollins, the leader, go down with a fucking move he had no business performing. You had Braun Breaker tear his goddamn hernia in a freak spot, literally just flipping the table over. And now you have Bronson Reed tearing his bicep. Like, I don't want to say karma's a bitch, but karma's a bitch, because Seth Rollins and Triple H, they laughed their asses off when they pulled that fucking, stupid ass little angle where he tore his knee or whatever. And then at SummerSlam, he comes back and cashes in on Punk. Like, eventually, karma was a bitch, and karma got up to all of those motherfuckers, right? Even Triple H, because this build has not been great. So now Bronson Reed is down. So now it's just Logan Paul and Austin Theory. And at that point, just fucking break up the group. What group do you even have at that point? Austin Theory, and nobody gives a fuck about Austin Theory. Logan Paul, I mean, come on, dude. I don't have to say much more about Logan Paul. Paul Heyman literally just feels like this guy is essentially going down with the sinking ship. And as far as Paul Heyman goes, we also got a segment here with Brock Lesnar. And I was kind of intrigued as far as this goes because Brock was announced last week to appear for this episode of Monday Night Raw. We really had no, idea what he was there for. We kind of figured he may open up a spot for the Elimination Chamber. He may find himself in the Elimination Chamber. Or maybe he was going to, target somebody like an LA Knight or an Obafemi, somebody who he's rumored to face at WrestleMania. But literally, he comes out here with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman talks him up and essentially says that there is an open challenge for Brock Lesnar, and that Brock Lesnar is having an open challenge. He lists the dates that he's advertised for from now until WrestleMania. And that's basically it. No interference by anybody, no Obafemi, no LA Knight, nothing. And after this segment was over, I told one of my buddies, I said, this could have been a fucking email. Like, this literally was an email. You had no reason to have Brock Lesnar out there, especially when you're paying him the amount of money that he's fucking making. I don't even know how many millions he's making on an appearance by himself. But, this was just a waste of time. It was a waste of my time and a waste of your time as well. We also had Liv Morgan officially pick her WrestleMania opponent, which ended up being Stephanie Vaquer. Stephanie Vaquer against Liv Morgan at WrestleMania 42. It's just whatever at this point. I don't really care. I think Liv is probably going to end up taking the title off of Stephanie Vaquer. Stephanie Vaquer has not had the greatest title reign at all, really. And it doesn't really do her justice when they literally changed her entrance music into what it is now. When she came out, I had zero idea who the hell it was because that entrance theme was just not doing any good for her. So I had a Becky Lynch pre-tape here, and thank God that they had a pre-tape here. They finally had some common sense to have a pre-tape here because the Becky Lynch, AJ Lee stuff has been god awful. I'm just sorry. It has. Neither woman has looked great in this entire feud. Like, AJ is obviously going to win at Elimination Chamber, but like at this point, I don't think really, like, the story, the promos, the match probably won't even be all that great. But like, this is where we are. This is what WrestleMania season has become. Also, one last thing, we had a Maxine Dupree match against Natty. And she has this whole new heel character thing that really nobody cares about. Maxine, this ended in like 90 seconds. I forget what exactly the spot was, but essentially she got knocked out cold. And I wondered whether or not this was a legitimate angle or whether or not this was a work. But either way, right? If it's one or the other, if it's a work, what bad fucking timing, right? You just had Bronson re-tear his fucking bicep. And if it's legitimate, then damn, that fucking roster is cursed for WrestleMania 42. It's like the wrestling gods just don't want that event to take place. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you thought of tonight's episode of Raw. And until next time, I will see all of you on the next one.